Hello, welcome to our first episode of the Wise Women podcast, which we are very excited about. My name is Kathy, and you may know me from my online presence, The Blue Butterfly. I'm joined here by my good friend, artist and author, Wyn Abbott. Hi, Wyn.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, we're very excited, aren't we?
We are very excited. Yes,
Yes, we are very excited. We've had lots of technical hitches and things going wrong. And obviously, the subject that we're talking about, you're going to be interested in this kind of stuff because we're actually recording this on a full moon. And so that's the least we could expect, really, is for mistakes to happen. But we're going to flow with it because it's a Scorpio full moon. And this is all about transformation and change. So what a fantastic day to start something.
and of course it's the 1st of May, so we're celebrating Beltane. So it's a really
Beltane.
what better day to record? Yeah, I mean, you're right. We have had a few technical issues because neither of us are that technically minded.
That is an understatement. That is an understatement. But Beltane is all about the light, about the fire to keep going and also growing through. This is where growth really starts at Beltane. So we're going to grow through this, Wyn.
Definitely are. We definitely are. Definitely.
So,
So,
just wanted to, Wyn, tell us about you.
well, I am an author and an artist, and all my work is inspired by ancient cultures and ancient myths and history, and not just seeing ancient myths as stories for the sake of stories, because they're not. They're far more than that. They
Yeah.
weren't designed to entertain. They were designed to explain the cosmic order of things and the seasonal changes and the journey of the sun. And how they did that was having all these multiple gods and goddesses. But what I'm really interested in, and what we're going to talk about today, really, isn't it, is that those ancestral links that are passed on through time that I never lost. It's just like one long thread. So we're going to go back to the thread at the very beginning and follow it through, hopefully, over the next few podcasts.
We certainly are. And in my work, I'm a Reiki master. I'm also trained in past life regression and I do work in spiritual art. And also, if you follow me on Facebook, you'll know about my page, The Blue Butterfly, where I offer intuitive guidance. But everything has come from some kind of knowing within me. That I think has been lost, passed through some generations in my family that's kind of discovered me again. And so these ancestral ties have always fascinated me, just the same as they do you, Wyn.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. What you said, that is that because quite often, and I think what we're trying to get to is that you don't know where some things come from, do you? You can go to a place and you feel familiar, or you can feel fear and you don't know why. There's something there that you just know that you know something about it, but you can't put that into words. And I think that's what you're saying.
Can't pinpoint it. It's just, like I said, it's a knowing. It's like intuition. That's just a knowing, isn't it?
It is. It's that knowing. I think we've all had it. We often will call it deja vu and think, oh, I feel like I've been here before. And but you can't explain it. But we can't always go back to find out why either. We can't always go back. So we might just be left with that wondering.
It's like when I first moved here, for example. This is a good example of that kind of thing. I don't think I've actually mentioned this to you, Wyn, but when we first moved here and we came to look at the house, I lived in a town, I was brought up in a town which is only about 5 miles away, but I hadn't done my family tree at that point. And when we came here, I just loved the area and it felt like coming home. There was a real particular quality to the air and the feel of the place. It felt like a warm embrace. And when I looked into it, on my father's side, his great great grandparents, they had farmed in a little hamlet which is about a mile and a half, 2 miles away from where I am now. So a lot of these fields around me would have been farmed by my family.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, and I do get that. And there's certain places that as soon as places in North Yorkshire particularly, where as soon as I went there, I just felt like I belonged there. And as far as I knew at the time, none of my family had ever lived there. But going back, then some of them actually did. But there was just this kind of really old familiarity with the place, and I think that I think that ancestral memories are passed down, and it's easy to dismiss that, but that we have so many genetic traits that are passed down through our DNA and through our genes, that I think that the ancestral memories are passed down as well. When I was at university, I did a module on animal ethics,
Oh
and
yeah.
they did quite a few studies where I mean, probably most people know about the studies that were done on rats and birds, and is it Pavlov's thing where
Pavlov's. Yes, yes,
where
yes.
and there's been so many studies where an animal was subjected to something, a smell, for instance, usually a smell or a taste, and at that point they would be given like a mild electric shock. It's horrible, isn't it? I know, but I mean,
It's horrible. Neither of us,
yeah,
promote this sort of stuff, but it's been done, so that's what we're
yeah,
just
it's
talking
not, we're
about.
certainly not condoning that, but what
No.
was they would then associate that smell or that sight with fear. But what was interesting is that they found that their generations afterwards of their kind of offspring also had that same kind of feeling of
Reaction.
fear
Yeah. Yeah,
when
yeah.
they same reaction when they were introduced to that smell, but they had never smelt it before. They didn't have that experience, and something. So what they found was that something changes in your biology, and it changes so that future generations kind of have that fear or
It,
that
it's so
experience.
it's so fascinating, and
Yeah.
there is actually a word for it. This kind of change in the DNA through trauma. It's called epigenetics,
Mm.
and that's one of the tests was doing it on animals. And there have been other sort of things that have happened in history. For example, we put some information about the links, what these things are maybe afterwards, or bigger examples, or more explanation. But I know there was something that happened in the Second World War, and it was in the Netherlands.
Was it the
And
Dutch famine?
the
Was
yes,
it?
that's it. That's it. I don't put any links. You can look it up. You can Google it. Wyn is on the case. So thank God you're here, Wyn. Um, yeah. So the Dutch famine, and what the Nazis tried to do was starve this particular area out, and they pretty much succeeded. And you can imagine how horrendous it was for those poor people. And it only went on for a short time, but it was so intense. Apparently, they reckon it changed the DNA in the descendants,
Uh,
because they found that previous to that, these sort of illnesses hadn't been around. But after this happened, in generations to come, and now I suppose we're sort of third generation down, that DNA structure was damaged because of the trauma. And you've got people that have got diabetes, heart conditions, some kind of mental health issues to do with food and that sort of thing, because of what their ancestors did. Now, what happened to their ancestors? Now, if you think about other things in the past, we haven't actually. They didn't have the way to sort of investigate that. So this must have happened loads of times that we don't know about.
yeah, I think it does, and so I mean, so clearly it happens on a biological basis. Things change, don't they? Um, and when we look at ancestral memories, we tend to look at it through rose-tinted glasses. I think we often do, because I look at the internet and it's kind of
Nostalgia.
yeah, and there is that element of it, but there's also all the trauma and the problems. So there's the kind of generational trauma, but there are also generational blessings that are passed down.
Of
Without,
course, and we must focus on that, because we are the result of all the struggles that our ancestors went through, and there must have been something very positive about each of them in their own way, in their generation, for us to all be here now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not the same by any means, but Well, no, I don't know. I think there are similarities. I mean, I love the stories of um, the indigenous Aborigines and the Dreamtime stories, and how the
Ah,
songs
yeah,
go through the land, and how and it's so that the memories and the stories of the ancient stay alive through the land and are passed on to other descendants.
yeah,
And do you know, I think that's really beautiful, and I kind of feel that that's not just there. You know, I mean, I think that we are experiencing kind of our ancestral memories, but we don't see it as a memory, do we? We see it as a feeling or a deja vu, or we trust in our instinct, um, because we need to label it, don't we? Really, I think that we're all
yeah.
looking for, aren't we? We're
And if you
looking,
think about it, these ancestral lines, a lot of it was verbal, carried down,
yeah,
by word of mouth. So people knew what their ancestors did many generations back. And
yeah,
because people lived in smaller areas, they didn't move very much. We were closer to everything. We were closer to how we all lived together in those times, closer to the earth. The skills were natural, and those that had the natural aptitude were encouraged. And I think then come the Industrial Revolution and the Victorians. Now I'm a history geek, and the Victorians, I pretty much blame that era for a lot of stuff. But during the Industrial Revolution, especially, I think those ties were cut,
yeah, yeah,
and they're coming out. They're going to come out, but you don't know where they've come from, because we
yeah.
don't have this relationship to those who have passed on. And some of that, I think, is our terrible relationship in the West with death.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. And but if you look at before we had written records, uh,
Yes,
I mean, we had shamans and spiritual leaders whose job was to kind of care for the well-being of the tribe, and we know that because we've got the cave drawings, we've got the burial finds and the artifacts, so we know that they had a very deep understanding of the elements and of the kind of symbolism, and they were
yes,
passed down through word of mouth and art. So when we got to written records, the first written records was like kind of the ancient Sumerian in the cuneiform text. Um, that was still passed down. Suddenly, things were starting to be recorded, but they were really only recorded. I mean, the first identified author was a female, but they were really only kind of recorded by men. So it looked as though
uh,
were doing the magical, the spells and everything. But women were still doing it, but theirs was passed down through word of mouth, through generation to generation. So it's being passed down in two different ways. One kind of in written records, and one kind of just verbally and teaching. So that was
yes,
passed. So there's like generations of history being passed down in one way or another. And in fact, that passed down by generations, I think, is often underestimated, because not all our written records
yeah.
are right, are they? I mean, let's face it, they're not all accurate. And we don't know how reliable some of these people were that wrote them down
I
anyway.
totally agree with you. It's like anything. It's like whispers, isn't it? After a
Yeah,
while, you lose the sense of it. And I think as well, I've been looking into the history. I mean, I when we were colonizing, when the Europeans, the English, the Dutch, etc., were colonizing everywhere, because we all thought we had it sussed, and that
yeah,
we were going to assimilate all these wonderful people that were quite happy living the lives of their ancestors, and were having the life that was their choice,
mm,
that had been around for thousands of years, until we decide we were going to make everything better for them. And then a lot of this ancestral, I mean, what did they do to the Native Americans and the Aborigines?
mm,
They tried to sort of, I don't think it's a word, Europeanize them.
yeah,
So they took them from their families and put them into special schools, and they were beaten if they spoke their own language. So
mm,
surely a lot of ancestral richness was literally knocked out of them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because I think that, today, people are really trying to get back in touch with their heritage and to get back in touch with their roots. And they need to know where they come from. This kind of this inner yearning, isn't there? Where I need to know where I come from.
Oh yeah.
Why this has happened in a certain way, why I'm being taught this. But we get our instincts taught out of us. I was brought up in the Roman Catholic.
I love that expression. That is really true. When we get our instincts, what did you say? Instincts
Taught
bred out of us.
Yeah, because I was brought
taught out of us. Yeah.
As a Roman Catholic, and they really, this is the way you do it. I mean, we all have those stories from school where, you're fighting with your instincts telling you to do one thing, and the people that are in power are telling you that you're wrong, and you do things. So
that carries on through life.
Yeah. So you think, well, and so something inside of you saying, no, I'm sure this is right. But then you doubt yourself, because everyone else who is older and more educated than you is telling you that you're wrong.
Of course. And you think they know better than you.
Yeah.
And that it's almost like, again, assimilation. Everybody's got to be the same. So you cut those ties to your ancestors.
Yeah.
And then what have you got? That's why I personally think a lot of people are floundering, because we don't have that community anymore. We don't embrace the richness of what has gone before and has made us who we are. Because I think, part of this whole reason we're doing this podcast is we both agree that for us to understand where we are and where we're going, we've got to understand our history, the myths and legends and the truths and everything that goes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it, really? And, we're never going to get all the answers, because it's lost in the annals of time. But I do think that we need to trust our instincts more and follow where they lead, and not to take everything we read at face value. I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you, because you're the same as me. You don't take things at face value. We like to think, well, where's that come from?
Yes, we like to get deep and dirty with everything and find out what the roots are. Yeah.
So I think that I think the whole ancestral memories is a fascinating subject, and I don't think it's a kind of a myth or a made up story. I think that those memories are passed down. And those experiences, like you were talking about epigenetics.
Epigenetics.
Yeah, that's the word, whatever it is. But you were talking about that, and it's absolutely right. It changes something in your DNA and your
chemistry. Yeah. It does.
Yeah, it changes. So your perception is different, but it's not really necessarily who you are, is it? It's who your ancestors were.
Yes, because
you're not fear from someone that's long gone.
Yes, it is. And, if you can inherit, like my mother doesn't like butter, and I don't like it. And it's just that's something I've inherited. I just don't like it. I didn't like it from a baby. So if I can inherit that is a sense, and a sixth sense, or, the land that they have touched, I think, is running in your veins all the way back. And it's like any DNA. So you might get 5 children, and some have got a lot of that DNA from that branch. Somebody else has got that, and somebody else has got. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think you get some children in a family who have picked up some other kind of DNA. We're not all going to be exactly the same.
No. It's kind of a combination of who you come into the world as, and which of those dominant genes.
Nature and nurture.
Yeah.
As well, isn't it? Isn't that how because some people are born into a family. And when I was little, when I started to see, it sounds like Sixth Sense, that film. I see dead people, but you know what I mean. I did see them when I was younger. I didn't understand what they were. Looking back now, obviously I do. But when I mentioned it as a child, it was like it was a bad thing, and I wasn't scared at all until I was told that.
But you see, that's it, isn't it? And how many children, they might have had a visible friend, or they might sense something, and they're told, "Oh, no, 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 it's imagination," and
Because
that's
nobody else in the family has
no,
that
yeah.
attitude,
So
and so they're saying this is wrong.
yeah, so that's what, yeah, and like I said earlier, so you end up doubting yourself because the adults who know more are telling you that you're wrong, so you start to doubt that, and just think of how many insecurities could start with that. The fact that you're doubting everything that you see and believe because somebody
Yes,
outside of you is telling you you're wrong.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, before we sort of, we're coming to the end soon of this podcast, but I wanted to talk as well about. I was talking about colonialization. Yeah, so when things are changed, and the two really big examples of that, I think, are loads of them all over the world, but close to home. I'm sure there are people that are listening, watching, who come from Scotland and have Scottish ancestry, and so the Highland clearances that happened in the 17 and 1800s, where you'd had these farmers that had lived quite happily on the land and been doing the same thing for a very long time and had
Mm,
their own communities there. And yes, it was hard, but because the English wanted that land, because they wanted to start farming other things and they would get sheep in there and all the rest of it, they basically cleared them out.
yeah,
The English cleared them out. They had no choice. So, for example, my great 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 grandfather, or it could have been further back than that, one of them, he ended up leaving and ended up settling in Glasgow. And then eventually, obviously, I happened, but that was several generations down. But
yeah,
I've still got this yearning for Scotland. The other one is Ireland. The way they treated the people, the Irish potato famine, the trauma that's involved in that, and
God,
the
yeah,
English, they just didn't. They could have let them keep their own grain they were actually growing in Ireland. But what did the English do? They sold it and let them starve. And
yeah,
then they all got displaced because the
yeah,
amount of people that moved, that moved from Ireland to America and England and all that. So that's like break, ancestral break. These people don't know where they come from. And so then as time goes on, generations come up and they start thinking, something's pulling me back there.
mm.
That's
Well,
why.
it is,
Unfinished business. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's like a whole other podcast about when people move and the kind of how they take their rituals and ceremonies
Yeah.
with them. I
But
spent,
sometimes they don't, do they?
I know,
That's the whole point. They don't.
I know, but I spent a week on the Isle of Rum in Scotland, actually looking at at the result of those clearances, and it was fascinating and heartbreaking in equal measure. And the Sheelings, and you could still see where people lived, and they were just sent off to America, sorry, Australia mainly. But yeah, so it's only a small island. I think it's 8 miles by 8 miles in any direction, in total. But it was wonderful to see it. But yeah, to see what had happened, and they turned it into a hunting island instead. But in doing that, of course, they destroyed what the island had, and it couldn't, because they changed the way it was supposed to be. It was a farming
Yes. So it couldn't
community.
recover.
No, it didn't recover, and actually it was fantastic to spend that whole week there studying that. But yeah, it was. You're right. There's so much as people are taken away from their roots and their heritage to a completely different environment. Um, and
And people always knew then as well who their father was, who their mother was, and their
yeah,
grandfather and all the rest of it, all the way down.
yeah,
Now, because of, this is a whole other podcast as well, Wim, but
you know,
religion, basically,
yeah,
people having their babies taken away, unmarried mothers home, the Magdalene laundries and all that sort of stuff. Those
yeah,
ancestral roots, again,
yeah,
another snap
yeah,
in the
yeah,
chain. And
yeah.
so then they haven't got that security
I
in
know.
themselves. And look at mental health these days. That has got to be something to do with that.
Of course it is. I mean, there's so much. I mean, it's just, I mean, tip of the iceberg. We're just talking the tip of the iceberg, but I mean, there's so much that you could kind of delve into isn't there?
But I think the most important thing is, no matter anybody who's watching this now, is that there is a way to reclaim it. You can look into your family history, word of mouth, the oldest person left in your family, for example, and find out some stories and some kind of inkling of it. And also, you know, if you're into meditation or anything like that, you can just stand there and you can ask to feel that connection.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
don't we all get, you know, we're doing certain things, you're painting, you're drawing. I only started gardening about 3 years ago, and because my husband got to a stage where he found it difficult, and I took to it immediately, and things started growing, and he's like, who knew you had green fingers? And I, you know, where do those things come from that feel so natural? And in essence, you don't even have to know. It's just wonderful that they've passed all these wonderful things down to you.
yeah. I think so. I think so. And you know, I mean, we are in a position now where we can look at DNA and we can go much deeper than we ever could before. And I think that's a fortunate thing. And there's been some really happy results. You know, people that I know
Mm,
that have had some amazing results of reuniting with their family and roots. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of stuff, and I think when I'm looking at ancestral work in my work,
yeah.
I can see the ancestral trauma that can be passed down, but equally there's the ancestral blessings and knowledge and all that sort of thing that's passed down as well. And I think that, you know, that we've got to look at both those, but you know, it's
And
balance, isn't
in my work, when I do my intuitive guidance, or even when I'm practicing Reiki, especially during the guidance, though, a lot of it is empowerment from ancestors. You know, if I'm talking to somebody like I'm talking to you now when I'm doing a reading, and I can just sense the empowerment and almost like see all these ancestors standing behind people
it?
saying, you've got it, come
Yeah.
on, you can do
Yeah.
it, you're the one.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
they're always with us, whether
Yeah.
you believe in that or not. You are your ancestors.
Yeah. 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 I do.
And that's probably a really good time. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened
Yeah.
there. A really good time for us to finish up for now, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, but we'll be back, and our next podcast we're going to do on the dark goddesses. So, I mean, you know, we look at Hecate and Kali and the Morrigan. So we're going to do a whole section on the dark goddesses, and I think that's going to be a really kind of interesting one to do. So Kathy's now
Oh, we
frozen in
seem
time.
to have
I hope
lost
she's going to be
connection
okay.
with Wyn, but I
But
think she is coming back. Sorry, Wyn, you froze a bit there. Can
you're
you
back.
say that again?
So I'm just saying, Kathy, I don't know if you heard, but I'm going to do our next podcast is she's frozen again, is on the dark
Hello.
goddesses. So we've got
This
Kali
full
and
moon
Hecate
is
and
just like
Ereshkigal and the Morrigan.
messing
So we're
with
going to be doing
us.
that on the dark
Wyn, come
goddesses.
back
And
to me.
at the end of this, you know, we will post our Facebook link. So press the subscribe button and,
I think we froze a bit there, so can you just go back over that again?
yeah, you could start from that last bit.
Yeah, just so everybody
Yeah.
can hear what you said, because I think actually you froze on a really good bit. So if everybody sees you looking like that, you were smiling and looking very happy. So
Oh,
that's
you were
okay.
frozen. I thought you were frozen. I was
Oh, I
still
thought
moving.
you were.
No, okay,
This
right.
full moon.
Okay, yeah. So our next podcast is going to be on dark goddesses, and so we'll be looking at Hecate and Kali and the Morrigan and Ereshkigal. So we'll be looking at the dark goddesses. I think that's going to be a really interesting.
Well, it's going to be interesting for me because I've got so many questions to ask you. Because
Oh,
you
okay.
will find out with these podcasts that we're going to do that. So, like this one, for example, we both knew a bit and we researched a bit more.
Yeah.
Found it very interesting. But some of them, one of us will know more than the other, and we might give each other a little bit of a grilling. You never know. But it's just going to be so interesting, and I hope that you're going to enjoy this journey that we're going on
Yeah,
together.
so it looks like I'm going to be getting a grilling, but that's okay. I'm quite looking forward to it. Yeah, so we will put our Facebook links on at the end of this video. So have a look at both our pages if you're not familiar with us, and also press the subscribe button. But more than anything, thank you all for joining us on our very first podcast, and hope that you will join us for our future ones. And we've got
Yeah.
a lot of subjects we want to talk about. However, if there's anything particular that you're particularly interested in, contact us, let us know, and we'll look at that. But for now, thank you, Kathy. It's been great talking to you again, and I'll let you get back to the garden.
Always a
And
pleasure, Wyn. Never a chore.
lots of love to everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye bye. See you soon.